We are a few days removed from UFC 323, and today I'm going to be looking at some of the fighters from the card and giving them their next matchups if I were a matchmaker with the UFC. And of course, we'll start with the main event. Petr Yan wins the bantamweight belt. I have him rematching for a second time Merab Dvalishvili. I think they need to run this trilogy fight. They're 1-1 against each other. Merab Dvalishvili dominated the first fight. Petr Yan dominated the second fight. And with the dominant reign that that Merab had, defending the belt, 3-4 times. I mean, 3 title defenses this year alone. A really, really dominant run. I think, he has no question in my mind earned an immediate rematch. I think there's plenty of champions that get undeserving rematches. So if anybody does deserve one, it's Merab Dvalishvili. As much as I don't like him and as much as I'd be rooting for Petr Yan in their trilogy fight, I think he's without a doubt, the guy who's most deserving. And then I guess you could see between, January on UFC 324, whoever has a more impressive performance between Sean O'Malley and Umar Nurmagomedov, you could see them fighting next for the belt. Maybe Umar Nurmagomedov deserves it more regardless of how dominant each performance is, just because, Sean has had 2 shots at the belt, and Umar, he's worked his way back up a little bit more than Sean O'Malley has. So yeah, a lot of moving parts with that card in UFC 324. And then I think one of those two will be next in line following Merab Dvalishvili, because I don't think it's any question. I think he deserves an immediate rematch at the belt. In the co-main event, Joshua Van got it done by a fluke injury TKO, weird situation over Alexandre Pantoja. And again, no surprise about who I haven't matched up with here. I think you got to run this fight back. I don't think Pantoja will be out terribly long. It looked to me like it was a dislocated elbow, unless there is ligament damage, in which case you could run Joshua Van versus Tatsuro Taira. But if it is just an elbow dislocation like I suspect it is, I don't think he'll be out for too long of a time where you'll need to run a fight in the meantime. I just don't think that's the case. So I say, get Pantoja back in there, maybe, I don't know, June, July, maybe even August of next year. I think he can definitely be back in the summertime. Now, if there is ligament damage, then you do run, or there's like torn ligaments in there and stuff, whatever the case may be with that. If there's some serious injuries, then you can run Joshua Van versus Tatsuro Taira. But if that's not the case, which I doubt, I would just do Joshua Van versus Alexandre Pantoja 2, the rematch for the flyweight belt. And then for Tatsuro Taira, he has no doubt staked his claim for being next in line for the title shot. So I would have him matched up with the winner of that rematch, which I do think will be Pantoja. I picked him in the first fight. A fluky, weird situation happened, even with the elbow injury. I do think running it back, I think he'll get the win by pretty dominant submission. I think he's going to get it done early over Joshua Van in the rematch, just like I picked him to do in the first fight. So, I think Taira, no doubt he's earned it. He had that really close fight with Brandon Royval, which was supposed to be his shot to get a title shot. That was his title eliminator fight. And he lost that, but it was a very competitive fight. Took 2 rounds of that fight. He had an undefeated rise up the division before that, so he had already built a lot of an impressive resume, climbing up the division. Now he has a win over Brandon Moreno by TKO to ground and pound. I mean, it's a very impressive win, and there's nobody else really in the picture. So no doubt after they run this rematch back, he deserves to be next. For Brandon Moreno, I have him matched up with Kyoji Horiguchi. I think this is a very compelling matchup. 2 guys that are very notable names in the flyweight division in both different promotions and in the UFC. Kyoji Horiguchi, he has a great resume in the UFC as well as in Ryzen. So, I think this is no doubt a really good matchup. I think it makes sense for both these guys. You want to get Kyoji Horiguchi up towards the top of the division pretty soon because he is 35 years old, so you don't have a lot of time to waste. And then for Brandon Moreno, I mean, this is a big name for him. This is a big chance to bounce back. I think it's a winnable matchup for him. I think both of these guys, I think they can approach this matchup and win it. Brandon Moreno, I mean, he's coming off, he has 2-1 in his last 3 fights, but he's coming over a TKO loss, and his wins before that were not really telling. I mean, he had a very lackluster decision against Steve Erceg. Same thing with the Amir Al-Bazi fight, just a pretty lackluster decision. Didn't show a whole lot, so I think he's going to be looking quite a bit down the rankings for his next fight, and I think this matchup makes a lot of sense. 2 really big names in that flyweight division. For Payton Talbott, I have him matched up with Chito Vera. Now, I know Chito Vera isn't much of a step up. He might, in fact, even be a step down over Henry Cejudo in terms of the bantamweight division. However, I don't want to rush him too quick. I don't want to give him a I don't know, a Sandhagen right now. I think that might be a little bit too much too soon for Payton Talbott. So I would give him another guy in that 5 to 10 range of the division. And I think the perfect matchup in this case is Chito Vera. Chito Vera, I think this is a very winnable matchup for Payton Talbott. So I think that's another thing too. I think the UFC does want to promote him. They want to get him to the top of the sport. And Chito Vera is a guy who will get him or keep him right on track to getting to the top of the sport because Chito Vera sucks. I'm just going to keep it real. He's not good. He's just going to stand in front of Payton Talbott and be a punching bag and walk forward and wait to throw anything until the last round of the fight for 15 minutes and probably gift Payton Talbott a decision win, 30-27. So I think this is a good matchup in terms of building Payton Talbott. I also think it'd be a fun striking matchup because both these guys are high-level strikers, and maybe Chito Vera shows something that he hasn't before and he comes out a little bit more aggressive. But yeah, this is a good matchup in terms of building up Payton Talbott and in terms of putting on a fun fight for the fans and not rushing him too quick. I don't want to throw him into a matchup where he's fighting a guy who just fought for the belt, who's been in this sport way longer than he has. Let's pump the brakes on that. Henry Cejudo was already a huge jump up the rankings. Let's keep slow building him. He's young. We got time with this. Moving on to Jan Blachowicz, who drew with Bogdan Guskov. I'm matching up both of them. For them. I don't know what I'm saying right now. But Jamal Hill, I have for Jan Blachowicz next up. And if you've been following what's happening on social media, the beef between Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Jamal Hill, this makes all too much sense. I think Jan Blachowicz even mentioned something about being willing to fight Jamal Hill outside of a professional setting. He said, I would like to fight you where there is no refs. And there's no ref to save you, and there is no ref to stop the fight. So he wants to fight Jamal Hill. I think Jamal Hill's game to fight anyone. We know that. He's very confident in himself, to say the least. So I like this matchup next. I think both these guys are in a bit of a similar position in the rankings. I actually think they're right next to each other in the light heavyweight rankings, so it makes a lot of sense. Both guys are on a bit of a downhill slide. Jan Blachowicz, I know he had a draw, so it isn't a loss, but he did draw with number 11 in the division, so he's going to be looking down the rankings. It's not a performance that's going to get him a shot back up the rankings. And for Jamal Hill, I mean, same thing for him. He's going to be looking. He's definitely not going to be looking to fight up the rankings. Coming off 3 straight losses, I want to say, to Pereira, Yuri, and then Roundtree. But both these guys, I think, are going to be on a similar timeline with Jan Blachowicz. He just took quite a bit of damage in that fight against Bogdan Guskov. Got dropped really bad and took a ton of damage from ground and pound in round 2. And then Jamal Hill, I think he's rehabbing an injury. So we'll probably be looking to get both these guys back in the middle of next year. So I think this fight makes sense timeline-wise. It makes sense grudge match-wise. And yeah, both these guys are looking to prove something. And I think you have a veteran versus veteran matchup, and the winner can maybe look to climb back up the rankings. Bogdan Guskov, I have matched up with Johnny Walker. This will be a rebooked fight. These guys have already agreed to fight each other once, so I don't think this will be a problem getting pen put to paper. Johnny Walker, he's coming off that win over Mingyang Zhang Mingyang, however you want to say it. I know it's kind of weird with the Chinese guys. It tends to flip-flop sometimes. But yeah, they've fought each other before. Johnny Walker's coming off a win, so he's going to be looking up the rankings. Bogdan Guskov sitting right above him, I believe. And yeah, this fight makes a lot of sense. Plus, I think Bogdan Guskov and Walter Walker, who's Johnny Walker's brother, they are training partners. And I've heard that him and Walter and Johnny have some inter-family beef. They're not happy with each other right now. I don't know what's going on with that. I don't want to speculate too much on some family drama, but that could be a compelling storyline with this fight too. But I also just think it makes sense in terms of the trajectory both these guys are on. Johnny Walker turned away a big-time prospect in Mingyang Zhang. And Bogdan Guskov kind of blew a win he had in the bag over Jan Blachowicz by fumbling round 3 like that and not throwing, not taking advantage of the momentum he had. So, yeah, I think these guys are right next to each other in the rankings, similar to the last fight. When you have a draw, it's kind of a weird position that both guys are in because you can't really give them a jump up the rankings off a draw, but you can't really give them, you can't just feed them to a prospect after having a draw. It's kind of a tricky situation. So I think for both these guys, fighting someone on a similar trajectory in terms of one going up, one going down, like in the Bogdan Guskov versus Johnny Walker matchup, or two guys that are on the downhill slide like Jan Blachowicz and Jamal Hill, the winner would get a shot back up the rankings. So I think both these matchups make sense trajectory-wise, and there's beef. These fights already being booked before. It makes sense. I don't think this will be hard to get done. And then for this last box down here, I have Manuel Torres for SCM and Chris Duncan, 3 lightweights that got big wins at UFC 323. Chris Duncan beat Terrence McKinney, in a very fun performance, very telling performance. He's a tough guy. He fought through a lot of adversity in that fight, came back to get a round 1 sub over Terrence McKinney. Fares Ziam, dominant as he's been in recent fights, completely shut down Nazem Sadikov on the feet and on the ground, got a TKO finish in round 2. And Manuel Torres smoked Grant Dawson out bad in round 1, got by knockout. So what I have for them is 3 other guys in the lightweight division, 3 guys that are on a downhill slide themselves. Beneil Dariush coming off a 16-second KO loss to Benoit Saint-Denis. Moicano coming off a loss himself to Beneil Dariush, which is very not good right now considering the slide that Beneil Dariush is on. And then Michael Chandler, who's had plenty of opportunities at the top of the division, and he keeps losing. So it's about time he takes on an up-and-coming contender. So depending on the timeline that each of these guys are on, maybe one of them picked up an injury, maybe one of them, I don't know, they want to spend some time with their family over holidays and they're going to be out of shape for a little bit. I don't know what the case may be. But I would match each of these 3 against one of the respective guys on the other side. Doesn't have to be anyone in particular. I would like to see Manuel Torres versus Michael Chandler. I think that would be a sick fight. Manuel Torres is super entertaining, and so is Michael Chandler. So I think that would be a great addition to any pay-per-view. Or I think there's a Mexico City card early next year, so maybe do that as like the co-main event. I think that would be a really stellar co-main event. Fares Ziam, he could fight one of Beneil Dariush or Moicano. And then same thing for Chris Duncan. He could fight one of those 2. So I would just get these guys booked against each other. The older guard of the lightweight division who's on a little bit of a downhill slide against 3 hot up-and-coming contenders in Manuel Torres, Fares Ziam, and Chris Duncan. All 3 of them on impressive streaks. Manuel Torres not so much because he did get knocked out by Ignacio Bahamondes not long ago. But he rebuilt himself, got back-to-back round 1 finishes over 2 veterans in the division. So yeah, I think those are the matchups to make. They can get a little creative with the lightweight matchups, do whatever they want, do the most compelling matchups, do the ones that makes most sense for the timeline each guy is on. But for the rest of these guys, I like these matchups a lot, and I think the UFC should get to booking them. That's all I got for you guys in this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. I would appreciate if you liked and subscribed, and I will see you in the next one.